Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the latest episode from the Lessons from the Playroom podcast. I have with me two really special guests to talk about a very important topic, a topic that I've actually only heard these two individuals really talk about, and a topic that I think we need to be talking more about in the play therapy field because it's incredibly important. And what I'm referring to is working in crisis situations, particularly international types of crisis situations. So let me go ahead and introduce our two guests for for our conversation today. So I have with me Claudio Mochi, who is the director of the University Master's Program in Play Therapy of the International Academy for Play Therapy, founder and president of the Association for Play Therapy Italy. He's a psychologist, psychotherapist, registered play therapy supervisor, expert in emergency interventions and disaster mental health with over 20 years of international field experience. He's presented on play therapy and trauma on 6 continents, totaling over 20 countries. He's authored books, chapters, numerous articles. His work is far spread, far reached across the globe, everyone. We also have Isabella Cassina, who's the Director of Project Management at the International Academy for Play Therapy, based in Switzerland, editor of APTI's Play Therapy magazine, and a founding member of the International Consortium of Play Therapy Association. She's a social worker, registered therapeutic play specialist, PhD candidate in expressive arts therapy. Congratulations on that. She is a university lecturer, author, expert in cooperation and project development with over 12 years of international field experience, crisis, and high vulnerability. So I just have to say, first of all, welcome to both of you. It's an honor to have you both. And I'm sitting here kind of in awe at the level of expertise that you both have together combined and the level of knowledge that you both have combined. And I just want to say I'm super excited for the conversation that we're about to have.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so let's just jump into this. So Isabella, why don't you kick off the conversation? How did you even get into crisis work, international crisis work?
Okay, thank you, Lisa, for this invitation. We really appreciate it, and we are very glad to see you. So actually, my first experience in humanitarian field was 18 years ago in 2006 in Colombia. We developed activities with children in an extremely poor area. I was already a social worker at that time, and when I came back home, I thought, okay, this is the area I want to work in, but I wanna know how to do my job. I really wanted to be an added value. So, yeah, and by the way, I remember years later, I remember writing an article titled, "Do you feel like volunteering? Well, that's not enough." And actually, I always had a very clear idea that to work in certain contexts, you really have to be prepared. And so I enrolled in 2-year full-time master's program in international cooperation and project development at the University of Geneva in Switzerland. And yeah, I'm Swiss. I lived in the Italian-speaking part, so I moved to the French side of the country. And then after my university, after I got my degree at university, my first job was in Belgrade, in the capital of Serbia. And I was working with an NGO in the migration sector in a project to support the refugees from the war. It was a very strong experience in human terms. And it was 2009. And I remember that, among other things, we were making visits to collective centers. They were actually first aid shelters that had remained intact over the decades and accommodated several generations. So children who had been born after the end of the war, they talked about it as if it was still ongoing. Yeah, there was a strong component of intergenerational trauma.
Yeah.
And as I work in Serbia, increasingly in contact with children and families, I felt I was missing something like another part of skills and competencies. And so I heard about play therapy. And I heard about it from a colleague. Specifically, she was telling me about this association for play therapy that was founded in Italy, that had been founded actually the year before by Claudio. And I didn't know Claudio at that time, and I decided to start this certification process. And so over the years, I attended trainings in play therapy in various countries around the world, and this was so enriching. And so when I came back to Switzerland, I started working for the Swiss Red Cross in asylum seekers and refugee sector, and I was head of social services. And so within the Swiss Red Cross, with Claudio and other colleagues, in 2013, we developed a 5-year project to support migrant children and families.
Mm.
Can I take 2 minutes to talk about this, or we can talk about this later?
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah, actually, because I mean, for me, it was revealing this project, and it was very well structured and complete, touching several areas. There were so recreational activities had been adapted to the needs of the children and adolescents, and teaching included the use of expressive materials and play activities, and the teacher used non-directive skills. And then the nurse in the center had created a play corner in the clinic, and she used play during examinations of young patients. And we had created also a playroom where we did play therapy sessions with the children who had bigger needs. And we also organized some meetings for parents to inform them, to sensitize them about various aspects in childhood, about brain development, but also to create this kind of time for recreation, for sharing, for reassurance for them. It was very interesting experience, and from which actually a concept and a model was developed that I called recovering lost playtime, and which we had the pleasure of writing about in our publications,
Mm.
and which we presented also at some international conferences.
Mhm.
And actually, if I had to simplify this concept, is it that during the migration process or any other difficult time for children, they lose opportunities for growth and for well-being, and they lose precious playtime that we wish to give them back somehow. And our intervention aims to support them in recovering the playtime they have lost by creating certain conditions and positive experiences on as many occasions as possible. So both inside and outside the playroom. This is one of our big topics, inside and outside the playroom.
So
So
can I just say
yeah.
that I just got excited because I don't know where you're both going in the conversation, but my guess is you just also planted a seed about your philosophy and what you
Oh
feel
yes.
is important. So I'm
Yeah.
excited to get to how do we help these children and what's needed. But how beautiful the concept of creating an opportunity for them to recover what they've lost.
Yeah.
So beautiful.
And yeah, and you got it perfectly. And actually, what if I think about the last 10 years, I see how everything we did is linked. One thing is linked to another. And we were building in these years like what we are, what we do, and what we think today. So actually, somehow our philosophy started many years ago. Actually, for me, it started in 2006. So when I started thinking, okay, doing this kind of work is not for somehow for everybody. So we have to be trained. We have to really know what to do in order to be an added value. And so returning very briefly on my own journey, in 2017, I decided to leave my job in the Red Cross to devote myself completely to play therapy. And then with Claudio, we had founded INA, which is the International Academy for Play Therapy in Switzerland. It was in 2015, and yeah, right. And it's an approved provider and runs training and projects around the world. So I started working full time for INA. And in the meantime, because I didn't have enough work to do, I decided to get a certificate of advanced graduate studies in expressive art therapy. And I started my doctoral research in the same time. So I was like, yeah. And then from there, many things happened. So in the last 10 years, really a lot of things happened, like projects in Switzerland and Italy, but of course also abroad. So Nigeria, Venezuela, India, and then trainings and conferences in 6 countries. And the first ever play therapy magazine in Italian, and I mean, many other things. But yeah, it's like, yeah,
Congratulations. Yeah.
it
Right.
was an amazing journey. So
Well, I mean, I said at the beginning, I was sort of when I was looking at your bios and reading your bios. I mean, really, what the two of you have done is really just spectacular, and you've helped so many people. So yes, you've just confirmed it again. Yes. Anything else you want to add, or Claudio, do you want to share a little bit about your journey with this?
Isabella said something that we have in common, a part of the story we share, just something very short, and how I get it into international crisis intervention, because I was a clinical psychologist working in Italy in different kind of contexts, like community, therapeutic communities, foster homes, and then I started to be a trainer in psychological first aid for rescue in the Red Cross. And after a couple of years of that, working in different small and big emergencies, then I start to apply to have the idea to work abroad. And I counted that I spent something around 2,500 days on the field, either in conflict areas or in natural disaster areas. So I've seen many different contexts, and through the work, especially when I met Isabella, we start to confront ourselves, and then start to build a knowledge of what we were doing, what was effective, what was important to consider in our work. And that is the very interesting part of this work, because that's something might sound rhetorical, but the more you know that there's so much to learn, and especially you have to learn in every different context. So I've been in many places. I've been also in many places working with Isabella. But the thing is, every situation is so different. And you need time to understand it. You need time to reflect on what is going on. I think for us, we both work for big organizations, and the reason why to go on with our own means and create our small organization was that so many times big organizations have already their recipe. They have already their own solution for a situation that they might not know, or they don't know. Because that is the very important part. So you need time to observe, get your knowledge, your learning, and then to start to build a relationship with people. That is the most important part that we learned so far.
What you're saying is just reminding me even of really just the whole idea in play therapy that every child is unique. You know, even if I mean, you're talking about this on a larger situation, but every child's unique, and so the idea of learning one way or doing one thing and applying that one thing in this one way to this one child, no, that how do we take the time to know who the child is, to know the context this child is in, and I'm hearing you apply that to larger situations, which is really lovely.
Yeah, it's exactly. You said it very well. Yeah, I agree completely.
Well, let's go into a little bit around your approach. You know, you just said you've created your own unique organization, and you have trainings that come out of that. So listeners, if you're interested, we'll come back to that at the very end. And if you want to learn how to work with international crisis, these two are the people for you to learn how to do it with. But what is your approach? How do you go about this?
Who's gonna tell? Okay, I'm gonna say.
I mean,
So
okay.
let's start from one consideration. Then we are in the same room, as you can probably notice. So please, Isabella, feel free to add anything. Uh, let's start from one consideration. Crises are very complex and very dynamic. Usually, from a difficult situation, there are many things that adds up, and the situation become worse in many situations. So, the first consideration is there's no one approach. There's not one protocol. You know, at the same time, any crisis is very time and space sensitive. So it is important to use our timing to approach the people, but not too much, to give space for their own creative solution of difficulties, but not too much, because maybe they might not have in very critical moments. So we developed an approach that balances the need to be flexible enough to adjust and to learn, at the same time to have reference point. So if you want to be a contributor, you want to work in a crisis, you should be an added value. You should bring something. And we think that our something is to have we call it a map, a collection of reference points, a collection of elements that are useful probably in all critical circumstances. So did I say properly?
Yeah.
Can you give an example, like how, yeah, give an example how it just help us see this a little bit.
Yeah. So on one side, one of the key elements, we know that should be a preparatory phase and an advanced phase. So our intent is first to gain understanding, to do our groundwork, to do the work that allow us to be in contact with people, to create a sense of familiarity, to gain knowledge about the community, about the culture, and at the same time to prepare something that can be useful in those kind of contexts. So we start by approaching, let's say one of the first phases is the involvement. So to reach as many people as possible with a less specialized kind of intervention, and with the time to progress, creating something that is really specialized to the need of the people. So we combine community work with clinical work. So this is one of our elements. And then one other key element is that we think that clinical work is very important, but it's not enough. There are so many needs. So the hierarchy of needs should be considered, but also in psychosocial terms, we know that we need to multiply the opportunity for healthy interactions. So we consider both what's happening in the playroom, or the therapy room, but also outside. That's a key aspect.
Part of what I'm appreciating is sometimes when we think about crisis work, sometimes I hear, right, the excitement or the desire to be helpful, but sometimes people talk about it as an in and out. Oh, I'm going to go and I'm going to help, and it's this like in and out kind of a thing. And what you're both presenting here is something quite different. It's not an in and out. It's more of a becoming with, or joining with to see what the needs really are. Am I hearing that correctly? And do you hear the in and out sometimes too from people? I'm going to just go in and help in the way I think I should help.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. This is what people love. And this is what we are fighting against since many years. This idea that you can just have your ideas and reach a certain country, maybe even for a holiday, not even for working there in another field, but just for a holiday, and just see a situation and try to do something that you think is okay, but actually is not. So I always like to say that it's good to call things with their proper name. So if you are doing a holiday and you want to play with kids, that's doing a holiday and play with kids, but it's not a humanitarian work. So it's really good to say what you are doing to, yeah. And also because in this field, in crisis work, also in play therapy, it's very easy to think that you are doing something that you are not. I don't know, I guess it happened to you many times that you are speaking with a colleague and they tell you maybe you explain that you are a play therapist and maybe they answer, I use toys too in my room, so probably I'm a play therapist too. And you just have this feeling like, no, you're not. You're not. It's a long process. It's a lot of study and it's about theoretical models and many trainings and supervision and clinical practice. I mean, it's much more. And doing crisis work is much more than going in a place and just try to do something that comes to your mind. Because you can even do something that can be perceived, that can be dangerous actually, that can do the opposite of what you would like to do. So yes, this is probably the biggest frustration in this field. So seeing that people consider this kind of work something simple that you can do during your holidays. So yeah.
We have seen in several situations, big organization, average organization, that they use play and they use it sometimes in a way of are setting a show, provide amusement. First of all, without really asking, is that what you need first? And then, of course, even critical circumstances, it's possible to play with children, to have fun together. But our purpose is not to setting up a show, a playful moment that can be remembered, sometimes in a nice way, sometimes in a not very nice way. But to use a metaphor for us is to create a play sanctuaries, to create a culture of play. What can do play? What can do when you can interact with each other, when you can be a resource with each other. And even if we have our own ideas, our own tools, we always try to pay attention to co-constructing. That's why we have to be flexible enough. So I love play. I think I'm fairly playful person. I use play in therapy. I use play also outside in other circumstances. But it's not always the time for play. That's what we were speaking before, to create a base.
Yeah.
Because also parents are important.
Yeah.
Family, support system is important. That should be involved because sooner or later we are gonna go. We've been we did a training in Nigeria for 5 years. And of course, even if you stay a long time, you're gonna go away one day. It can be after 3 months or 1 year, but it's what stays that make the difference.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just thinking of like all the different, such a high level of cultural sensitivity, like at a high level and culture on so many, whether it's the language, whether it's the customs, whether it's traditions, whether it's, I mean, I'm hearing the significance of that as you're speaking. Wow. Yes. I'm feeling the complexity of what you're sharing. And the, yeah.
I
Isabella.
can add something. Yeah, I was thinking because Claudio mentioned the map. So the map as a ensemble of reference point that can guide us in the field, but also in our approach. The map stands for my awareness process. So actually is the process, of understanding what's happening and not just what I have to do, but who am I in this kind of context? What can I do? But first of all, what this context need. So it's really a whole awareness process. It's not just, I know the technique, I go there and I'm going to do this. So really, as Claudia was saying, taking time to understand what's going on. And each situation is so different. Then, of course, we need to have some guidelines. We cannot just go there without knowing anything. We have to be prepared, but flexible enough to understand and to welcome the needs of the field. So yes, as you were saying, it's quite complex.
I have a question that just piqued in my mind. I can only imagine that this is part of your training and what you do. I want to hear a little bit about the impact on the therapist. You know, I would imagine that that it could be a lot. Or will you just speak to that? Because I think sometimes maybe play therapists is in the goodness of their heart, I want to help, maybe without really understanding what they're also going to be asked to have to sort through and hold and go through on this journey. Can you speak to that a little bit, Isabella?
Yeah, that's very important actually, because what we often have people asking us, how do you manage all of it? How could I manage all of it if I go somewhere in the field and I participate in a project? It's again a whole process. So you have to be prepared before. You have to do some things. I don't find another word in English now. During the stay in the field, and you have to work on this also after. So it's not just learning something and going there, but preparing yourself before going there, having some routines when you are in another country doing this kind of work, and once you go back, also thinking about what you did. So it's before, during, and after.
Do you mind if I share a little story?
Please do.
Isabella, you already heard, so I have patience. And when it was long time ago, it was 2004, I was working in Iran after an earthquake, and it was probably the second or third project I was working there. And since I had this strong base as a rescue trainer, I knew a lot of stress management stuff. So I was journaling. I am fond of skipping the ropes, and I did my dissertation on Qigong, so all the meditation, the breathing part. And I was enjoying it. I was working, it was very hard. In that situation, half of the population died. So there was really a huge amount of needs and a lot of things to do, a lot of things to manage. But I thought at the time I was doing quite well. And at some point there was they were filming a documentary. And apparently I was one of the few psychologists over there. They wanted to interview me, and it went very well. I was smooth in front of the camera. At some point, the journalist asked me, okay, but what was the worst moment? In that situation, I froze. And really, I started to cry, because I reconnect those peak moment, and then I understood something very important. There is a stress management, but in any case, we are accumulating so many implicit memories, so many implicit learning, and the key of self-care is also give space and expression to this. And if you don't do it, they will stay there and they will reappear, maybe forever, but whenever you expect. So that was a big learning. At the time, I didn't know what was my mistake. Later on, I understood. So that part is how you take care of what you are learning, and how you give a possibility to give voice to those experiences.
Thank you for sharing that. Isabella, did you want to add something to that? Or?
Oh, I was just thinking how much this episode had an impact for Claudio, because I mean, still has, right? So yeah, I was just thinking about this. Or so really, some things you just, if you don't process them, they can create a reaction in you even 20 years later. That's why. So that's why this part is so important, and every person that comes with us in our project, so that face this kind of experience, must be prepared. because then sometimes once you are there, you cannot be, let me use this very hard word, but you cannot be a burden for people there because they have already their difficulties, and you cannot be one more person crying and having difficulties. You have to be, and I know we are repeating this word, but you have to be an added value for the field. Otherwise, it's better if you stay at home, you prepare better yourself, and you reach us later. Then, of course, there are different kind of contexts. Not all the contexts where we worked, they are so difficult, like after an earthquake or a war. Some contexts are, let's say, a little less not complicated. How can we say that? Like,
but sometimes the difficult elements can be quite subtle, but they are many. And so they had to one another create something that is very difficult to escape from sometimes. Yeah.
Let's go back a little bit to more of the philosophy.
Yeah.
I mean, I mean, really, I'm just really. This is a really touching conversation, really, as I'm listening to both of you, and so much beautiful work that you're both doing. And I want to hear more. You know, I want to hear more of your philosophy. I want to hear more of your approach. I'm hearing how you hold your therapists that work with you so beautifully. I'm hearing how you attempt to hold the community so beautifully. What else? What else is
where we can start from?
yeah?
I have a short story, but you can go.
You have a story?
I have a short
Which one?
story. It's a Gaza story.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And I underline something. I am blessed to not having any political connotation in the work, in the context where I go. I don't bring it any prejudice. This is, I think I'm very lucky for this because it's come natural. And it's something that we discussed recently. Now in the media, we spoke a lot. There is a lot of coverage on Gaza Strip. And I worked there a long time ago for a year. We developed a project. I was going there just 1 week per month. And I remember the first time I visited a kindergarten in a very difficult place. There were a lot of rebels. There were bombing, shooting constantly. And at the time I was thinking, okay, what we can do there? There's nothing we can do there. Nobody can protect anybody here. So if there is physical safety cannot be put in place, what can we do? And once I entered there, in a very small kindergarten, and all around you could see distraction, you see that these kids were playing. And it's fantastic. And so one thing, the philosophy is, first, there is this internal instinct to cope with difficulties in many ways. In your podcast, you covered beautifully in so many instances. So I don't need to add anything. But another thing is they were doing so because they were teachers able to provide those signals, those cues of safety that could enable them to trigger those natural way of coping, natural health mechanism. So one of the things in our mechanism is we take care, we consider, we include in our intervention both children, their families, and all the support system. So our intervention is strongly based on capacity building, in supporting the supporters, of course. It seems obvious, but you know what? That in many situations, projects are consider capacity building as training. It's not the same. Because one thing is if I train you, okay, you have this knowledge, but it's different. It really turns into a capacity. No, the way we do it, first we adjust it, So what is really needed there? Those teachers didn't need many things because they were fantastic. But on the other side, they need somebody to co-regulate them, to be aware of something. What we were explaining about is implicit experiences, and they need to add some other skills. But to head it, it's important to, what we do is not just training, but to demonstrate.
Yeah.
And to supervise, and then adjust and do another cycle. So it's not just share some knowledge. So that's one piece.
I get, like, once again, it's just what you're just describing is so unbelievably beautiful. How do you create safety within a situation where the body's saying on a regular basis things aren't safe, but how do you create some sense of safety? So I love what you said, the natural healing coping mechanisms internally get to emerge. So beautiful, so beautiful. Oh goodness. Well, let's talk a little bit about, I imagine there are listeners that are really curious, and after they listen to this podcast are going to want to go and learn more and hear more about opportunities. And so we share a little bit more about where can our audience find you, a little bit more about training, associations, whatever you want our audience to know, to have access to.
Thank you, Lisa, for giving us space also for this part.
Yeah.
Actually, our INA, which is the International Academy for Play Therapy, INA is a kind of cute acronym, and everybody somehow, even kids, remember it, and this is so nice because it's easy to say. Anyway, our INA, we organize training in several play therapy methodologies, actually, but also in expressive arts therapy and in the integration of play therapy and expressive arts. And actually, our training offer also includes how to engage communities and families in context of high vulnerability, which doesn't mean only in context of emergency, but also in vulnerabilities that are complex and dynamic, but not like after a war or after an earthquake. So actually in any kind of difficult situation that we might face in even this morning, I spoke with a colleague in the States, and I know in some places there are wildfires. And this is a crisis, it is a critical situation. Of course, it's not a war, but it's a kind of natural disaster. And it's something that people have to manage, and it's so difficult. So when we speak about crisis, we speak about all these kind of difficult situations. And so we offer trainings in how to manage this kind of situation. And actually right now we are starting the calendar for next year, for 2025. And we will have both online and in-person training. And from next year, we will have intensive classes in Switzerland, allowing professionals to integrate play therapy and expressive arts in crisis work. So, and in this program, Claudia and I will be the leading teachers, but we will have other colleagues from Play Therapy Board and experts from fields of trauma, international cooperation, and work in high vulnerable settings. They will also be involved. And actually, it will be a very rich, but also practical program that prepares for action. We really like this part, not just the technical part, theoretical part, but okay, now that I know this, what can I do? So we really like to integrate this practical part. And
how much play therapy training does somebody need to already have in order to participate? I bet that's a question that at least one listener probably has.
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, it depends on let's say our idea is that every play therapy process should or could start from learning child-centered play therapy, so non-directive skills. And so ideally, when a person comes with us in the field, for example, they should have already an idea about this methodology. And then everything this person has learned more, the better. But then, of course, also it is important to consider what kind of project we are doing and what is needed there. And so, for example, if other methodologies are needed because of the needs of children, then it's the methodology that we require for joining guys in the field.
Amazing. Claudio, any other associations?
Yeah,
you wanna talk
yeah.
about?
It depends a lot on the context. As Isabella said, we had, for example, some trainees who join a very well-established project we had in Nigeria. So they had a little training. They received them in the morning, a training, and they were practicing in the evening. So, but was very well established kind of training. So they could practice and give an added value to the place, to the children they worked with. And that was a very specific circumstances, but I'm sure will be something similar will be available soon. Yeah.
I want to highlight, so you both have written some chapters in some books. So for listeners that are still curious, want to read a little bit more, I know that you wrote a chapter in, did you do was it a treatment planning chapter specifically on working with international crisis?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
So what, if you can share the names of the books that you've written some chapters in, because maybe that will also be a place.
Do you remember the whole time?
Oh yeah. So
Okay.
there's the one you mentioned. We are very happy to be part of it. Our contribution is quite. I think there is a resonance there.
So this is Mary Affey and
Oh,
Lynn Under's book
yes.
on treatment planning and psychotherapy. Yep.
Yes, we're very happy to have a contribution there. Then there is in trauma impact with Jessica Stone, Robert Grant, and Claire Millentilin.
Well,
Sorry, the pronunciation. And then on the polyvagal theory in the playroom, Paris Goodyear Brown and Laurie Yasinick book, and we have 2 chapters. But we have also a book we co-edited. So it's Cassina, Mochi, and Stagniti, a crisis, and you know it. I can see it also in the back.
No, in the meantime, just I found also the notes about all the other books. Anyway, our book is Play Therapy and Expressive Arts in a Complex and Dynamic World, Opportunities and Challenges Inside and Outside the Playroom. So it's really focused on also our philosophy that we were speaking about before. And there are a lot of contributions from other colleagues from Play Therapy world, and it's a very interesting book.
wonderful.
Very practical.
Well, as we start to find a stopping point here, is there anything else from both of you that you feel you really want to share this piece, or a message to play therapists, as we start to close out our conversation?
Do
you have
something on your mind, Claudio?
I think we're through the lines. We said already a lot. I think is, as you said, Lisa, for every child, what's happening with every client, I think one moment is to provide respect as a first part. And respect, if you think from Latin, is respicio, is to take a moment, to take a pause, instead of just replying when something is not even clear for us. So take a moment to understand. And this goes with individual and even more with communities. So when what we say, Isabella and I, is crisis is a place where when falling in love is not convenient. Sometimes professionals fall in love with their own tools. Oh, I learn it and I want to use it. If I think of myself, before start to work internationally, I collected a lot of tools to work in emergencies, and I never use it, because then I understood what was more important, what other elements. So other elements important is sometimes to take a pause and try to understand. That's the special moment in which also you create a connection. You have a chance to create a connection with others. That's one of the key elements.
Mm. I'm hearing also that the piece around don't assume that you know what's needed.
Yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely. Because you don't know. You've never
Yeah.
been there.
Yeah.
You've never
Yeah.
been in that position. You cannot know.
Mhm. Isabella?
I'm trying to formulate something. Claudio, can you just
Sure.
yeah, on the one side, so I would like somehow people to know that it's so many things. Wait, I wanted to give you my last sentence, but actually I have so many thoughts on my mind because this discussion is like brought me so many memories and things. But yeah, let's say this kind of work is very complex, and it requires preparation, but it's highly needed. So if people want to do this kind of job, just do it, prepare yourself and do it because it's needed, and because play therapy is perfect for crisis work. So if you are already play therapist, let's add one part and be prepared for coming with us in the field, or me, or with any other organization that does quality work in crisis. So this would be my, it's not a recommendation, it's just a thought there always said.
Beautiful. Well, I'm going to circle all the way back around to the beginning, and I know I've said this so many times in this podcast, but when I think of the two of you, you two, in my mind, are the experts in this. And when I think about crisis work and bringing play therapy into that space, I mean, I couldn't imagine that process not having the both of you involved in that in some way. You're just the voice for this in our field, and just on behalf of the field, thank you to everything that you're doing, everything you've done, everything you're creating, how you're advancing the work, how you're helping so many people. So truly, thank you.
Very, very kind of you, Lisa. Thank you.
And I'm touched by this conversation. This conversation's got my heart all warm and fuzzy, and lots to think about. So just a deep, heartfelt thank you to you both.
Thank you, Lisa, for inviting us and for listening to us.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, likewise. Really, thanks. I appreciate very much your words, your comments, and space to share our own perspective.
Yeah. So listeners, my hope is that if this is of interest to you, that you now are resourced and know where to go find some support in your learning. And as always, wherever you are in the world, whatever you're doing, whatever you're up to, take care of yourself. You are important. You're the most important toy in the playroom. Until next time, everyone.